we're very pleased to welcome the Vice President of the EV Charge Division at TotalEnergies, Mr. Pierre Clasquin. Welcome, Pierre.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. So I just see on the timer that I've been already consumed 2 minutes, which is a little bit strange, but anyway. So my topic of today is to speak about something which is an hard topic for us, which is basically about the pricing, more specifically on fast charging solution. As you all know, because you're all part of this industry, we have different use cases when it comes to charging. And the way we put it together is depending on the context, on the use cases, you have two different aspects to take into account. The first one is the parking. In some opportunities, the main purpose of what you do is to park the car. And then, when the most important part of the use case is parking, the charging is more an opportunity, which means if there is a space and you park your car there, you have an opportunity when you park to charge. Okay, first. Second, and at the very extreme, you have the use case in which charging is the most important and the only focus, which means parking is a constraint. And this is exactly the use case I will be talking here. It's typically cases in a context of service station or fast charging hubs, in which you are just here to charge and not to do something else. So let's say the quicker the better, the faster the better. And then the question is about what could be considered as the most appropriate approach when it comes to the pricing scheme to put in face of these services. And this is what I call this torture of quartering that I will describe a bit. Initially, I wanted to put a real picture of a quartering, but some people in our marketing team told me that it's probably not, it's a bit too harsh and too rude. So we have some candies with a very nice little girl over there. What I mean by the torture of quartering. The point is, when it comes to pricing, we try to factor in different kind of topics which pulling us in opposite directions. And of course, it's a matter of balance, of finding potentially an unstable balance, but some kind of balance in order to address those topics. So I will quickly cover the different topics, or at least expectations from the different stakeholders in these different boxes. First one is customer satisfaction. What does it mean? It's quite simple. As a customer, we want an easy access to charging services, something cheap, and something available. I think it's a good summary, and it's easy to understand. Another important topic in our industry, and I think you have probably most of you many real-life examples that you could refer to, and we have many of them. You may have, a very smart pricing model, everything written in a very small character in a paper or whatsoever, or in an app, but the ability for the customers to understand, to grab what it means exactly is clearly a challenge. And we have seen many, many complaints about customers not really understanding how much they have been built for, claiming it's unfair, claiming it's a theft, or all these kind of nice words. So it's clear that keeping it as simple as possible from a customer standpoint is very important. So this is another area of to be integrated. Another way to see the situation is to put ourselves in the shoes of a charge point operator, as a CPO, as we call it, and to ask, okay, I invest a lot of money in infrastructure, costs me a lot of money to install those chargers, the charger, the installation, the cabling, blah blah blah. As an infrastructure manager, my main purpose or my main objective is to have as many people as possible, coming up to my infrastructure, in order to have an average use rate of my infrastructure, which is as high as possible. And this is important because, of course, here and there we talk a lot about EVs. In terms of sales, we have now some decent shares of sales made up EV, but there is still the park, and as a CPO, we live with the park. And I'm sure that some of you have already seen a business plan for a CPO. It's not necessarily very, very exciting. It's a lot of capex. It's a long payback. And of course, in order to make the investment decision, you have to secure your traffic as much as possible. And again, in terms of infrastructure efficiency, and it's true for every kind of infrastructure, not necessarily for this specific one, it's a case. Next topic is a profitable business. So this one is pretty much obvious as well. From a CPO selling charging services, the higher my price is, the better for me, because my margin, is going to be better, and it's nice. And of course, I want to have the more people in my infrastructure in a particular period of time. So if we try to see all these different constraints, we clearly see the issue, because we cannot have all this together in the meantime. So it's a matter of making some decision, and we went through this process, and we are still in it, in the process of trying to find out. And to be honest, this is my expectation for today is to reach the community as well, and to say, okay, could we share about the most appropriate pricing schemes, which is both acceptable, relatively simple to understand, and efficient from a CPO standpoint. And I will give you an example of the thought process we are in, on the kind of not necessarily trouble, but the kind of questions that we go through. Typically, and it goes with regulation as well, because we have different flavors depending on countries, in terms of the ability to sell by kilowatt hour or by time, by minute, or whatsoever, which doesn't help, of course, to make the pricing scheme understandable to consumers. In fact, we had the case in our French network, because of the local regulation. Initially, we started with a standard pricing model with a price per kilowatt hour. And then, because of regulation, we had the state agencies coming to us to say, guys, you are not allowed to do this because you don't have the appropriate license. The charger doesn't have the appropriate methodologies regulation. to certify that the kilowatt hours going through a DC charger is really the kilowatt hour which is put. So you cannot do this. So you have to come back or to comply and to sell by minute. If you try to have a look in terms of simple, it's relatively simple. You say it's, I don't know, 50 cents per minute. I think even the most stupid person could understand. But you know, we end up in some situations which were, I don't know if it's funny or not funny, not necessarily very funny, but you have the, let's take a simple example. You know, you have a small car with a max capacity of 50 kilowatt, okay? And then you have a nice German car allowing to charge at 150. So what is the end situation is, you know, the person with a big car, assuming probably with most of money, will pay 3 times cheaper than the person with a small car. And this is exactly what did happen. Is it really fair? Is it really understandable? It really depends. From a pure, let's say, legal standpoint, it was fully legal, so no problem. Okay. In terms of efficiency, for a CPO, we say, okay, you stay on my infrastructure just to consume 3 times less than the others, so it's fair that you pay more. But when you are on public, when you see on the press, okay, people with small car pay 3 times more than people with large car, it's totally unacceptable. Okay, so fortunately, this problem has been solved in terms of regulation, and we have no the ability to come back to a more reasonable pricing schemes based on kilowatt hour. On the next question, which I think is interesting, is what we call idle fee. And to be honest, we question ourselves: is it fair to apply an idle fee for people staying more than let's say 45 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever, 1 hour, whatever, on a fast charger, which we all know is efficient for 30 or 40 minutes, but not really efficient afterwards. And again, there is different way of seeing this stuff. From the infrastructure standpoint, you say, okay, it's fair because, you know, when we are at the end of the charging curve, we are not efficient, so we just deliver a few kilowatt instead of delivering the full power which is available on the charger. So it may be seen as fair from this standpoint. On the other side, and discussing this topic with at eye level with our CEO, he told me that you're crazy. You will annoy people and they could not finish their lunch, and you will ask them to pay for an unfair price for something they don't get. Because it's true that if you charge people for, I don't know, a few euros on top of their charging just because they stay there, it may be seen as and you cannot finish your coffee or your ice cream, and you have to rush to take back your car. It's not necessarily very pleasant. But the next question is it fair for the other people waiting? Because when you are in a queue and you see the car, a charger, busy, not charging, I don't know for you, but for me, it will drive me crazy. And if we don't do something, people will fight. We will have people fighting in front of the chargers for that. So no, it's true. It's human nature. It's not German, French, or whatever. It's human nature. Okay. So what is the good answer? To be honest, we don't know. What is for sure is sometimes on paper it looks very smart, but I think we have to stay on the ground as well on making sure that we are not pulled too much either on the CPO or on the efficiency, because it's if you don't have any constraint, or if you don't put yourself any constraint in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of ability for users to understand, it's relatively easy to be efficient. On the other side, as I was pitching, it's easy to be very simple, but it will be at the price of not necessarily being very efficient. I know as an industry, if the CPO cannot develop and deploy some sustainable and profitable business, it will be difficult to attract the necessary investment which has to be made in this new infrastructure. So at this point, to be honest, I'm more sharing my frustration or my questioning process than trying to be very smart in front of you, saying, "Yeah, we have found a perfect solution." We haven't. We are clearly still in a thought process, and we are eagerly waiting for others to test, to see what could be done. To see what is acceptable or not, and it's clearly the kind of questioning process we are clearly in. I think it will probably take some time before we see a dominant pricing model popping up, because for sure when it will happen, it will be adopted by all the community, and it will be a good reference for all the customers. And again, as not necessarily during this session, but I think all the team, we are very interested in getting your feedback and your return and experience about what is the most appropriate approach. We could probably see that something based on kilowatt hour, because this is a basic unit of energy, makes sense. How do we value the power? Is it something that instead of just having a kind of fixed price on a charger, having the ability to deliver such power? Is it something to be done on the actual power which is taken out of the chargers? How do we integrate this idle fee? Which kind of communication has to be put in this idle fee in order to make sure this is not something imposed on people, but something beneficial for the community? Because it's a way, because it's not funny when you're trying to finish up your coffee, but when you are queuing and waiting, it's good for you. So you will be very pleased to have the idle fee. Again, a question mark to us. We have seen, and of course it's a bit different, but we see that in the telco industry, it took some time to have this subscription flat fee model emerging. Not too sure that it's something which is easy to, or even legal to implement in our industry, but probably we will have some potential solution in that direction. In terms of embarking the customer, which is probably for me as we speak one of the big challenge, because there is so many issues, and it's linked with the pricing from the CPO, the pricing from the MSPs. So the customer sometimes are lost in terms of the real price which they will have. So it's clear that the ability to upfront explain, show what is the unit price, which will be probably typically here, the kilowatt hour is at this price, is important, but it's not enough. The ability to, along the charging process, to inform, and even before, just before launching a station, having the idea about what's going to be the pricing that I will pay for what I'm just doing is important. And during the whole process, to have a kind of regular update, it's not having something on the charger, the old-fashioned stuff, but still some kind of information. It's clear that with all the apps and the digital tools, it should help. But again, I think the real bulletproof point solution is not totally available to us, and it's going to be key because we see it's not a black swan because as such, but you all know we are facing some major increase in the electricity price. If you have a look on the forward pricing for next for Q1 or Q2 next year, you are probably, depending on countries, around 850 or even 1,000 euro per megawatt hour, which means that if we had to reflect this onto the real pricing delivered on such on a fast charger, we will probably end up at 1 euro or 1.20 euro per kilowatt hour, which is clearly a very bad signal for the EV industry, because as most governments in Europe have put some shield on the gasoline price, it would mean that it would cost 2 times or 3 times more to run an EV than running an internal combustion engine, and I'm not sure this is a kind of message that government or the industry is looking for. So I think we have to be cautious on this topic. It's something clearly which is an externality to what we are talking, but I think it just put the emphasis on the topic of the pricing, because we used to have this image or this idea that electricity is very cheap. I think the time of the cheap electricity is more or less over, at least for some time. And the pricing scheme and what we put around this pricing model will be probably key in ensuring the success on the large development of electric mobility in Europe, because we have a major gap to go through. It's the next change for EV so far has been mainly EV for rich people or let's say wealthy people. In the coming years, in the coming decade, we have to make sure EV is for everyone. So for people with low income, not necessarily people enjoying the nice large German cars that could be provided. So again, and it will be my final word, it's, I think, very important that we work together, because this is clearly the pricing model is not something that one single person will impose. It's a community approach on thinking all together what is the most appropriate, the most efficient in terms of aggregating or including all these constraints, knowing that, of course, it's going to be a matter of balance, and there is, again, no perfect solution. But at least that we could make sure that a not too stupid, if not smart, pricing model will emerge to ensure the success of this industry. This was my final word, so I don't know if there is some questions.
Thank you very much for your
You're
presentation,
welcome.
first of all.
I surprise you.
Don't run away. So once again, just a quick reminder how to use the app to send our speakers your questions. When you click into the session, there's one little bar that has a little green symbol next to it that says we are live now. So just click on the green and it'll take you to another window. And then in the top right, it says ask. So if you want to ask, click into ask, and then you can type in your questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions or comments, here is your opportunity. I see already a few have been sent in the meantime. Our first question is from Matthias, or I can keep it anonymous. It's Matthias Lackinger who asks, what do you think about dynamic pricing for EV charging? Do you have any plans for dynamic pricing as a gas station operator?
I think it's a good question because when it comes to dynamic pricing, it looks, at first, it looks very smart. It's a good way to be more efficient. Clearly, more efficient for the CPO because it's a way to have access to the energy at a cheaper price. So, from the CPO standpoint, it's good. Potentially for the users, it's good as well because it's if the CPO plays the game and reflects this benefit to him to the end user, it's a good way to benefit from this and having access to a better price for the end user as well. My only fear, to be very honest, is I think it doesn't help when it comes to simplicity and making users to understand what's going on. Because that means you don't know exactly which price you will pay, when you benefit from it, what kind of engagement, what kind of commitments. I'm not saying it. I think it's smart. It will probably happen. I'm just saying that it increases, I think, the level of complexity that we have to integrate in order to find out on how we involve. There is two ways about that. Either you say, okay, the customer is stupid, he will never understand, okay? So we will do it, but we'll do it in the background, and at some point, he will benefit from it. First way. Second way, which is more this is the old-fashioned, it's a typical view of a large infrastructure. Their thought process is that way. I think nowadays, we could be a little bit more engaging with users to say, okay, it's not only users, it's a consumer, but it's a player of its own journey as well. So how do we involve the customers in the process with the ability to decide, to understand what's going on, potentially to which level the customer would like to participate or not? A lot of good questions, but I don't think it adds to the simplicity I was looking for.
Okay, I think we have another question. Ila Momber asks, what is the right level of profitability for CPOs to attract appropriate investment level?
Yeah, so it's a good question. That's something I just scratched quickly. I don't think if there is a right level, but I think if we take into consideration, there is a couple of issues, let's say. Okay, first one is because probably the technology is not fully mature yet, and the investment cost, the upfront investment cost is relatively high, okay? Second issue is, as I said, we talk a lot about EV. When it comes to sales, we see the percentage of sales which is getting bigger, but there is all the park effect. And if you, I think some of you, or maybe most of you, were in Oslo in last June or July, I don't remember well. You see in Norway, there are, I think, about 80% of sales, new sales, which are EV. But still, when you are in Oslo, most of the cars you see, IC, are not EV. And when you invest in infrastructure, you don't mind much on the new cars. What you live with is the existing cars. And I think this is something we have to take into consideration, is the risks. In any BP, it's typically a hockey stick like of business plan. And I was referring to the payback period, which is for a CPO on most of the projects we see or we invest. Of course, there is always some differences, but typically it's very difficult to find a project with a payback with less than 8 years, and most often it's 10. So from a pure financial standpoint, if you go, I don't know, on to an investor to say, okay, I have a very nice project, it's energy transition, fantastic, great, but the payback is 10 years, it's long to recover your money in 10 years, and a lot of things could happen in 10 years. If we just have a look back the last 3 years, we had the COVID, we have the war in Ukraine, what's next? Now we have inflation. So any kind of new issue could delay the BP by 1 or 2 years, and you end up in an even tough situation when it comes to pure financial. So it's not yet a pure infrastructure, and it's to answer the question, it's not yet a pure infrastructure play. Usually the large infrastructure plays, they have very limited risk because they know exactly the cash which will be generated, so it's easy to say, okay, I'm okay, excluding inflation, to have a 3 or 4% internal rate of return. On this CPO topic, it's still, from a financial standpoint, more, it's between a VC, a venture play and an infra play. So you need higher return. On below 10, to be honest, I think it's challenging because with all the risks that we may face, it's challenging. And it's not typically, or maybe we are very bad in managing our BP, I don't know, but I haven't seen any BP in which we have a 20% return, which is normally something that you could expect, again, taking into account all the risks that may happen. So said differently, as a conclusion, as we speak, CPO is not necessarily a glamorous business. This is something we have to do. I think there are companies who are ready to do it because it's part of, they have a bigger picture. But as such, it's not so easy. I'm not too sure if it were my own money from my savings that I would invest massively on the CPO business, honestly.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple of more questions. Here it comes. So Philip asks, how many pricing models has TotalEnergies already evaluated?
So basically, we have been in let's say 3 kind of model. And coming back to my intro, in fact, we are managing some different kind of CPOs. We have CPOs in urban environment, in city centers, for example, in London or in Paris. And in this case, the first services we sell is more parking. It's not necessarily charging is on top, but the first services is parking. And in that case, we align the price of the services to the parking schemes which is applicable in the city. So typically about a couple of euro per 30 minutes or per up to 6 euro per hour, something like this. Because again, the main purpose when someone comes is not necessarily to charge. Charge is an opportunity, but to park. At the opposite, I think I made a long, probably too long speech about the kilowatt hour. On the fast charging, it looks like aligning a pricing model with the kilowatt hour sounds a more reasonable approach. And then there is all the mix. On the idle fees, part of it is to include a part of the pricing scheme aligned with the time spent on the infrastructure, plus something linked with the energy taken. Of course, what we have included as well is, but it's not dynamic, it's purely static, is when you charge on a 50 kilowatt charger, you will pay typically, 50 cents, while it's on a more powerful chargers, let's say 175, you will pay 10 or 15 cents more, so which is a way to differentiate the services for ultra fast versus fast, or the same with 22 whatsoever. So But to be honest, at this stage, it's relatively, it's not very sophisticated. And we see that, again, a lot of feedback, and it's real life. It's not real, that it's very difficult for people, especially when there are different kind of subscription. To give one example on this, in Paris, we received a lot of complaints because people don't understand that they will be charged by minute, and you have someone, parking his car on the evening, taking up in the next day in the morning, and receiving an invoice for 80 or 100 euro, and crying or screaming like hell, it's a shame, blah, 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 blah. Again, it's written. And it's all about acceptability and understanding what's going on. So many things to be done here.
Thank you for that answer. I think we have time for one more question. Yep, there is another one, in fact. Ad hoc payment method, future or a ghost from the past? From Arnoldas Dapkus.
I think it's a good question because I think it relates to the payment terminal as well, and all the lengthy discussions about does it make sense to have a payment terminal or not? And for me, it's not easy because we all have in our pocket a wallet with some credit cards, and it would have been seem very simple to say let's use it and we pay with it and the game is over. Okay, so no more MSPs, no more roaming platforms. Sorry for object and all this painful stuff which are making your life complicated. Okay. If we just have a look on what's going on, and again, in some countries, you have to cope with the regulation. You have to offer an ad hoc, just to ensure an open access to everyone. You have to. It's not a choice. You have to offer an ad hoc payment. So there is two options. Either you have a payment terminal on the charger, but it's still a limited case. We have this for the Bélib network, which is in the city of Paris. You have a totem in which you have a payment. But I'm not too sure someone could help me. But if we see the numbers of transactions made using the payment terminal, I think it's just a few percent, 2 or 3%. So if you just have a look on what happens, it's not in theory, it's real. There is no point of deploying very costly systems because it's not adopted by users. When it comes to ad hoc payment with using an app, so there is two ways. Either there is a payment terminal, either you have an app, which is the most common approach, allowing to pay with your credit card on ad hoc. Again, it's a little bit more. I think it's less than 20% from this is the number I've got on top of my memory. But it's not the most deployed way. As we speak, we have 80% of people paying with an MSP card. Either it's a card from the CPO, the local CPO, when you have special subscription schemes, or from other MSPs. So as we speak, and again it may change, but what we see is we had to implement this because of regulation, but it's not necessarily something which has been largely adopted by users.
Okay, Pierre, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for the keynote and for answering everyone's questions. So, Pierre Clasquin from TotalEnergies, thank you very much.
Thank you.